What's up, and welcome back to another live stream with Gizmo Slip Tech. Today we have a three-way comparison. If I can pull that off, this will be the first time trying to do a laptop live stream comparison. We're gonna try to do benchmarks side by side with three laptops with split screen. I don't know if this is gonna be possible or not, but we're gonna freaking try it. All right. So we got my goal is to do Cinebench, Timespy. We're gonna compare the displays on these three laptops with the data I've already collected. We're gonna look at the keyboard, the trackpad. We're gonna stack these laptops on top of each other. We're gonna look at the ports on each of these laptops. We're gonna look at the price. We're gonna look at that CPU performance. We're gonna look at that GPU performance. Then we're gonna try to actually test some games side by side, either one after another or all at the same time if possible. We'll have to see if Steam works in offline mode and all of that. This is gonna be like a new adventure for everybody, all right, including me. But if it works, it'll be freaking awesome and fun. All right, so what's up? I see people hopping into the live stream. So here are the laptops. So we've got the Zephyrus G16 right here, the Gigabyte G5 right here, and the MSI Cyborg 15 here on the left. All three of them have RTX 4060s. They all three have webcams, but only the Zephyrus G16 has Windows Hello. They all have full HD displays, but this is 16:9, this is 16:9, and this display is 16:10, which means it has a taller vertical aspect ratio. All right. Looks like NVIDIA is updating the VBIOS, or Asus is updating the VBIOS. It just came up with a pop-up and said not to do anything. So we're not doing anything there. We're gonna see, hopefully there's no problem as they update the VBIOS. Jeez. Okay, well, this is exciting. On air VBIOS updating by Asus. I didn't do that. Anyway, the cool part about doing this side by side is that you can easily tell performance differences. You can check for size differences. You know, the big key difference, we have different CPUs, we have different quality of displays, different brightnesses of the display. And then in addition, we also have much different GPU wattage on each of these. So 45 watts to the RTX 4060 in the Cyborg with a single fan design. We've got 75 watts with the Gigabyte G5, and then we've got up to 120 watts with the Zephyrus G16. And the biggest question in my mind is it going to be worth the price increase, you know, paying for the additional money, going for the more expensive Zephyrus G16? Now, I don't know why, but so far I'm not seeing anyone in chatting, and I want to make sure is the stream working okay, everybody? Do we have any issues right now with the stream? What's up, Phantom? Okay, so without further ado, let's start physically comparing these three laptops side by side. Okay, everything's good. Phantom says everything's good. All right, sweet. So let's take a look at the keyboard first. All right, the keyboard and trackpad setup on these three laptops. So first up, we'll go left to right. We have the Cyborg 15. This is a 15.6-inch display, right? 16:9. And it's impressive that they managed to fit a number pad in here. All right, we got full-size arrow keys. We got some hotkeys here. We have hotkeys along our F1 through 12 up here. And then the number pad, though, is not a very traditional layout to the number pad, which is going to be a big downside, I think, for this number pad. And this touchpad feels surprisingly good. It doesn't feel like a plastic pad. It feels more like a glass pad. Honestly, I think these two are plastic, but they feel more like glass compared to your traditional plastic pads. But I'm pretty sure they're plastic for the Gigabyte G5 and the Cyborg 15. The Zephyrus G16 is definitely a glass touchpad. Now, here is the keyboard on the Gigabyte G5. We've got arrow keys full size, number pad over here on the right, and this number pad is a lot more traditional of a layout. So a lot of people will like that a little more. You have dedicated home and page up, page downs. And then we've also got our row of F1 through 12 keys up at the top. And both the touchpad on the Cyborg and the Gigabyte G5 are in a nice position, and they're a very reasonable size. Okay. And next up, we have the Zephyrus G16. All right, so this guy has got the largest touchpad out of all three laptops. And I think the nicest keyboard to type on. Like, this keyboard feels a little bit more premium than the other two laptops. Membrane keyboard. This is more of a chiclet style keyboard. The arrow keys are not full size though. And that's going to be off-putting for some people. You do have page up, page down, home and end keys, but you have to use the FN key in combination. Where the other keyboards have dedicated buttons, or at least the Gigabyte G5 has dedicated buttons. Now, you do get a nice row of function buttons at the top that the other keyboards don't have. And this is your volume up and down, mic mute, and Armory Crate launch software. All right. So, let's take a look at the webcam for each of these next. So, here is the Gigabyte G5, or sorry, that's a Cyborg. All right, so here is the Cyborg, and you can see it's actually not a terrible webcam for the money, I think. For the price point that we're at, it's not amazing by any means. And honestly, all three of these webcams are not that amazing, but they're not awful for a gaming laptop. So that's the Cyborg 15. You can see the webcam right at the top right there. Top mounted. Here's the Gigabyte G5 webcam. And it, I'd say the G5 and the Cyborg are about the same, but I think the Gigabyte G5 webcam has a little bit more detail to it. All right. Looking at the Zephyrus G16. This webcam has Windows Hello. I feel like the Gigabyte G5 webcam actually has a little more detail to it. But yeah, this one has an IR sensor for infrared, so you can use Windows Hello on it. That's probably the biggest difference. But in terms of quality, all three are about the same quality. But I think the Gigabyte G5 actually has the best details. You know, the most details coming through overall. All right, what's up, everybody? Gigabyte Zephyrus G16 should not be in this category. It's only $350 difference, and I think it's worthy to consider it because it's going to be. The question mark is it worth paying more for it? And you know, these two, the Cyborg and the Gigabyte G5 are a bit more on the entry level side, with lower level cooling systems, and not quite as premium of a setup. But the thing is, like, a lot of people will be trying to decide, you know, is this Zephyrus G16 worth the extra $350? And if it is, fantastic. If it's not, then they're not going to want to spend the money, obviously, right? So, but we're going to try to answer that question today if we can. And I did test the Gigabyte G5 some more this morning, testing to see if I had any shutdown issues or the power adapter giving out. And I did not have any issues this morning with the power adapter giving out. So I'm hoping, my hope is that we don't have that issue anymore. All right. And I'm like we'll be doing more testing today, basically. But my problem with Gigabyte G5 was that we were running out of basically juice from the power adapter. It was going out, and that was causing us to lose power and cause dropping performance in the middle of game testing, which is not good. That's like a terrible thing to have happen to you. So my hope is that we don't have that happen again. Real quick, I'm grabbing the music files and putting them on the drive here. And then we're going to do a speaker test side by side with all three of these laptops. And this is the nice thing about doing this style of test, because it lets us do a speaker test in the exact same conditions to make sure that all of the settings for the microphone are all the same. Which, you know, sometimes gains go up and down if you're, you know, utilizing my VODs for those edits. So it's hard to ensure that it's the exact same level of volume between VODs. So I think this is going to be the fairest way to test these speakers out. From my personal view, is the Zephyrus G16 better than the TUF A15? That's a great question. So the TUF A15 is a last gen product that's only a 16:9 aspect ratio with older, I believe, GPU and CPU. So it's really going to come down to what specs you're getting for the money. And so unless I had more details, I wouldn't really be able to tell you precisely what's worth it or not. All right, so first up, we have the Gigabyte G5, or sorry, we have the Cyborg 15. We're gonna hold the mic about a foot in front, and we're gonna do our speaker test. So here's Peter Spacey with Roar. All right. Okay, and now we're gonna play the same song on the Gigabyte G5. All right, so here's Peter Spacey with Roar. Wow, the Cyborg sounded so much better than the Gigabyte G5. All right, so here's the Zephyrus G16. And let's make sure it sounds all the way up. Wow, the Zephyrus G16 speakers sound so much louder. Let's move on to the next song, which is Faded Aeon by Half-Life, I believe, or Half-Life by Faded Aeon, I believe. Yeah, that's what it is. All right. The G14 sounds amazing. That's the G16. Yeah, that's the G16. I gotta say, the Cyborg speakers do sound pretty decent. Wow, the Gigabyte G5 speakers are pretty terrible. All right, moving on to the G16. Yeah, those speakers sound pretty dang good. All right, so last one we're doing is a very vocals-centric song. La 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 by Deuce Williams. All right, and now for the Gigabyte G5. All right, and now for the G16 for the last song. So, what do you guys think of the speakers? Pretty interesting, huh? Elephant says, hi, did I miss anything? I like the speakers of the one in the middle. Really? So, the G16 speakers, so much more full bass, much better mids, decent highs. Like, it's a good all-around audio experience. Not amazing. It's not perfect. It could be better, but it's pretty good. I'd say it's like an 8.5, somewhere in that range. The Gigabyte is like very bad. It's very poor speakers. Probably the worst laptop I've tested this year so far on the speaker side of things, I think. One of the worst, at least. And then you've got the Cyborg 15. And the Cyborg 15, it's not bad, actually. I was kind of surprised. It was more like, I don't know, a 7.5 if I were to rate it versus some of these other ones. It's not quite as loud or as clear or as bassy as the G16, but it's not terrible. All right. G16 has the best sound, says Clow. Yeah, I would agree. Okay, so next up, let's compare display quality. I've pulled up the previous live streams, and I've got all the data here we can take a look at. And well, actually, let's take a look at our specs for the whole laptops. All right, now that we got more people on the stream, how much do these laptops cost? What do you get with each laptop as far as the pricing goes? All right, and then and where can you buy them? Okay, so this right here is my 2023 gaming laptop list. It features all of the best deals on gaming laptops, including RTX 3000 series laptops. The top deals section will rotate the best deals around. Okay, now if you go down the list, a little further, I've got all the laptops that have RTX 4000 series GPUs, and many of them have ratings. I'm going to keep adding more ratings. I really need to work on this list for a few days and just get all the ratings done and get everything up to date. But anyway, so you can sort and filter this laptop list by price, by laptop size, by the type of GPU or search for certain brands or whatever you want to do. So starting off, we have this Cyborg 15. All right, you get an i7 12650H RTX 4060 with 45 watts, 8 gigs of DDR5, 4800 memory, and it's a 512 gig SSD. Full HD 144 hertz, 45% NTSC. It's supposed to be like around 260 nits, but we tested it, and I need to update this now because we tested it and it was not quite that bright. All right, and it costs $10.99. You can get a 4050 version for $100 less, so $9.99. All right, this is where I bought it. There's links in the description down below. And yeah, so moving on to the Gigabyte G5, you only get an i5 12500H, so not quite as fast a processor as what you get with the Cyborg, but it's not like grossly behind. We'll take a look at some benchmarks here in a moment. We've got the RTX 4060 with 8 gigs of DDR4, 3200 RAM. So it's important to note that this Cyborg has DDR5 4800 RAM instead. And the important thing to note about that is that the DDR5 memory is typically better in dual channel. So it's a little bit better memory setup out of the box. The Gigabyte G5 also has 512 gig SSD and a full HD 144 hertz display. That's about the same color gamut you'll see here in a moment when we get to that. So I got mine off of Newegg. There is a link in the description to this guy. Again, I'm not entirely sure I can recommend the Gigabyte G5 overall, but we're throwing it in this comparison to give us a little more, I guess, spice of life or whatever you want to call it. All right, so the Zephyrus G16, we got an i7 13620H, so a 13th gen processor, but I believe this is very similar to the 12650H. Let me just do a quick search here. I believe this is the same number of cores and threads. Let's see. Yeah, so 6 performance cores, 4 efficiency cores, total. Yeah, so they're both the Cyborg and the Zephyrus have the same number of cores and threads between the two CPUs. Both of them are i7 10 core 16 threads. RTX 4060 120 watt up to 120 watts. Now it's not exactly 120 watt, but it's gonna be like 100 to 120 in most of the games I saw. 105 is what I saw pretty frequently. We have 16 gigs of DDR4 3200 RAM, and this is one stick soldered to the motherboard. There is a second SODIMM slot that is available for upgrade on the Zephyrus G16. It's a 512 gig SSD, full HD 165 hertz, so a higher refresh rate display. And I gotta say, there's a lot less ghosting on the G16. If you're looking for esports gaming, the G16, much better display, and it's also a much higher color gamut. Speaking of color gamuts, I've got the display tests here in front of me, and what's up, Red Allen? Welcome to the stream. So we've got the Zephyrus G16 up here first, and this is with my Spider 5 Elite display measurement tool. We got 94% of sRGB, 73% of Adobe, and 73% of the P3 color gamut. And the Spider 5 Elite underestimates the color gamut by several percent. Hard to say exactly, but like 8 to 9%, somewhere in that range. So we're getting basically 100% sRGB coverage, about 80% Adobe, and 80% of the P3 color gamut. The Gigabyte G5 only has 62% of the sRGB coverage. So that's a big difference in terms of color gamut coverage, because sRGB is like the biggest one for video gaming, I think. P3 and Adobe are nice if you can have them, especially if you do graphical work. But having 100% sRGB is, I think, very important to enhancing your gaming experience, especially when accompanied with a high brightness. All right, and then we have the Cyborg 15, 64% of sRGB, 49% of Adobe, 48% of the P3 color gamut. And going back, let's talk about brightness. We've got the brightness of these displays as well. So the Zephyrus G16 gets up to 284 nits with a contrast ratio of 1160 to 1. We have the Gigabyte G5 going to 261 nits with an 840 to 1 contrast ratio. It doesn't go over 1,000 for the contrast ratio, which is not great. Then we have the Cyborg 15, which has 60. Let's see, we got to go forward a little bit, and boom. All right, so 233 nits for the Cyborg. That's very dim, noticeably dimmer than these other two displays. So basically, the only good thing about the Cyborg is that it's got an 1100 to 1 contrast ratio. So the contrast ratio is not that terrible on it. Checking chat. All right. Am I going to test Fortnite? Not today. I hear you. I hear you about the core isolation, and I'm going to be testing that. Okay. All right. So so far we have looked at the display quality. We've looked at the speakers. We've looked at the keyboard layouts. And in terms of touchpad quality, the Zephyrus G16 is in another category of touchpad quality. The webcams, we also looked at those. I think the Gigabyte G5 had the best webcam, but we got Windows Hello on the Zephyrus G16. That's a big difference. In addition, we also mentioned that the Zephyrus G16 is also 16:10 aspect ratio, which is going to basically give you more screen real estate. And obviously the Zephyrus G16 had the best speaker quality out of the three, but the Cyborg actually had not too terrible of a speaker quality. The Gigabyte G5 speaker quality was really bad. All right, so how is the coil whine in these? I have not heard any coil whine from any of these three laptops, so none as far as I know. All right, so next up on our test for today, let's move into some actual benchmarking here, okay? So I'd like to try, let's do Cinebench, and we'll do Cinebench R23. And for each of these, we're going to put them into the highest performance modes for Cinebench. All right, and I'm curious what we're going to get. All right. And we'll try to run these at the same time if we can. The important things that we're going to look for in Cinebench is what's our overall score? And then next up, what's our temperatures like? And what's our power draw like? Which laptop is drawing the most juice from the wall? And then we're also going to be looking at what's, you know, of course, what our final scores are like. And can it consistently score a good score? So we've almost got everything pulled up on all three laptops. All right, and beautiful, beautiful. I hear MSI Cooler Boost. I've had it in its funny loud mode. Yeah. So we're going to put all of these into the highest performance mode. Given the control software, I guess we should do a control software comparison here. Right? I mean, that would make sense to go ahead and look at how these control softwares stack up. So let's do that as we get into this. So first, let's take a look at the Cyborg. So this is MSI. Let me switch cameras. There we go. So this is the MSI Center, it's called. You have 4 different modes. You have super battery, silent, balanced, and extreme performance. Extreme performance also has a cooler boost mode, which basically puts your fans on max fans to give you the most possible functionality. And you can also usually do a little bit of overclocking, or you actually have a fan profile curve you can set up here inside of MSI Center as well. But this is very bare bones. There's not that many settings in here. And at least it's very easy to run. It doesn't take up too many resources. There's a few additional settings in here, like you can disable the webcam, turn on and off a crosshair. That's about it. All right. So We're going to be in extreme performance mode for these tests. We're going to go and close that down. So this is the Gigabyte Control Center. And notice that this laptop is made by Clevo. So it's not a Gigabyte official branded laptop. So this is basically their control software. And there are there's 4 modes. You've got performance, entertainment, power savings, and quiet. And we're going to be using performance for our performance testing. There is no max fan. Oh, actually, there's a max fan right here. So we're going to set it to max fan right here. All right. There's a custom fan as well. But we're going to do maximum. So inside of here, you can control your the lighting. You can change the color of your keyboard. You can change it to green, red, blue, whatever you want. All right, we're going to just leave it at blue. And then over here on Zephyrus. So the Zephyrus G16 uses a program called Armory Crate. And this program is very more advanced than the other 2 laptops. You have silent, performance, turbo, and manual. We're going to be setting our fan profile to manual. And we're going to apply that. Now, inside of manual, you have power limits you can set for the CPU. It goes up to 110 watts to 135 for the short. And then for the GPU, you can also overclock it a little bit in here and adjust your dynamic boost or reduce your thermal target so it thermal throttles sooner if you want. And there is fan curve profiles here, so you can set your fan curve inside of the manual fan mode as well. All right, so we got all 3 fans going on maximum. And I got to say the loudest of these 3 is the Cyborg 15. I can hear it more clearly than the other 3 in terms of acoustics when on maximum fan. All right. So with that done, let's go ahead and, now that we've set everything into the highest performance modes, we are ready to do some testing. All right. So let's start with the Cyborg 15. I'm going to need to move. There we go. All right. So Cyborg 15, we're going to go ahead and just do a single run for right now. And then we're going to do a 10-minute run. So we're going to do a start off with a single run. And then we'll start a 10-minute run. So this is using the i7-12650H. If we pull up HW info, we can see that we're getting 3.5 gigahertz on the P cores and 3.1 on the E cores. And we're doing 78 watts of power to the CPU, at least for right now at the beginning. All right, so 78 watts is pretty dang good for like a more budgety laptop. It's not terrible. It's not amazing. Our temperatures are also pretty reasonable at 76 degrees and 83 degrees on the CPU so far. Now, we're going to do a 10-minute test, and that's when we're going to really see what it throttles down to and what the power limits are like. So, looking at our score here, Cyborg 15 got 13,831. So not quite 14,000, 13.8K. Let's go ahead and get started on a 10-minute test. All right, so we've got the Gigabyte G5. Let's go ahead and do an individual test. Checking chat. What is the AI setting? That's a setting that's like supposed to be an auto setting that basically tries to tune it as best they can. Majin Buu says, I hear people are complaining that their mobile GPU can't utilize their power fully at 140 watts, only maxed out at 100 watts. This is from the Asus ROG Strix G and Scar version. Interesting, Majin. I don't know what's going on with that. Phantom says, there's only one found and it's that loud. LOL. Yeah, it's pretty silly. Yeah. It says I have a choice between the Gigabyte G5 with 4060 for 1250 with tax, or a Hassi 4070 13700HX QHD for 1800 with tax. Is it worth it to pay more? Well, that CPU is much more powerful. I don't know about that brand, the Hassi brand, so I'm not sure about that part. But okay, so we got 14,561. Wow. All right, so we got 14.5, so more CPU performance on the i5 12500H, which is kind of hilarious. What the? Oh, look at our wattage. Our wattage is higher on the Gigabyte G5. That's why. We were doing 91 watts there for a little while. Our temperatures are very spicy right now. Look at our temps. We are maxing out 100 degrees Celsius. At least we were initially. It doesn't appear to be. Yeah, we still are doing 100 degrees Celsius on the package. That is some spicy temperatures. Spicy. All right. So I'm anticipating that the score on this guy is going to go down quite a bit for the 10-minute test. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get a 10-minute test started. After it completes another run here, I just wanted to do a test there. So only 14,000 with that run. All right. So moving on to the Zephyrus G16. Let's see what we get. So here we are. Notice our CPU cores, 4.6 gigahertz, is so much higher than what we were getting on the other laptops. And going down to our wattages, we're pulling 117 watts. We peaked at 135. Now we're doing 110 watts. So it didn't stay at the ultra high wattage and clock speed for too long, but now we're doing 4.6 gigahertz. Now we're doing 4.3 gigahertz. Our power limit is doing 103. Wow, that is so much better than these other two laptops. And look at that. We got 16,587. So that's a pretty big performance gain for the Zephyrus G16. Let's go ahead and start a 10-minute test and see what we get after 10 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and reset and get our averages on our HW info and make sure that we've got that going. Oh, I didn't do a 10-minute test on the Gigabyte. Sorry about that. Let me get that started. I'm going to reset our info here as well. All right, so notice that these laptops, none of them are raised up in the back. All right, so let's pop back over to chat and see if you guys have any questions right now, and then we'll start evaluating these laptops. Mo with the 250, holy schmoly, thank you so much for the donation. I really appreciate. And Dola would like to know, how does the deck feel with 100 degrees Celsius on the CPU? All right, so we can do that, but I don't anticipate the temperatures on these laptops getting too spicy with only a CPU-only load. So the Cyborg is pretty cool. It's just a little bit warm in the back over here. It's not that warm. Most of the other laptop, like the front of the laptop, is completely cool. The bottom of the laptop is actually pretty cool as well. All right, so the fan and like the CPU and GPU are up here in the top on the inside, and the fan is in the back left over here. There's only one fan on that guy. All right, so looking at the Gigabyte G5, let's see how the deck feels on this guy. So a little bit of warmth right here, a little bit of warmth here. Everything else is cool. The rear of the laptop, a little bit of warmth over here. So I think the CPU must be over here. And the bottom of the laptop is pretty cool. All right. All right. And then the Zephyrus. So this is the highest TDP laptop between the three of these. So it's honestly, it's most likely to be the warmest, but let's find out. So this wrist rest is cool. The touchpad is cool. This is cool. A little bit of warmth over here, over by the X and F and D keys. This area is cool. So the rear of the laptop, this is pretty warm though, out by the exhaust. The fan, you know, the fan brings air in and then it goes out through the left, the rear, and then the right. So overall, all three of the laptops aren't too bad during the CPU test so far. Let's take a closer look at the Cyborg's performance. And maybe we should take a look at, real quick, let's take a look at what the internal cooling looks like. CallsX, did you resolve the power adapter issue with the G5? So I tested it again this morning before doing this live stream, and I wasn't able to replicate the power adapter going out on me this morning. So I don't know what exactly is going on with that. All right, so we're going to look at the internal the way the internals look like on each of these laptops. So I'm just going to pull them up right now. All right, so here is the MSI Cyborg 15. You can see it's a single fan setup with like a 3 heat pipe system, 2 to the CPU, and this one goes to the VRMs on both. But so it's basically the GPU does get all 3, but the CPU only gets 2. And then this is the Gigabyte G5. We also have, I guess it's a 4 heat pipe system with 1 shared heat pipe. The big one here is shared. And then there's 2 to the GPU here, and then another 1 here to the CPU. So the CPU gets 1 dedicated and then 1 shared. And the VRMs are covered just by the copper plates, which is not ideal. Notice how easy it is to upgrade the RAM. And you have a second SSD slot here for the Gigabyte G5. The MSI gets only 1 SSD slot, even though they could have put one here. They didn't. You can upgrade the Wi-Fi on all 3 of these laptops, and you can upgrade the RAM on the Cyborg as well. So jumping over to the Zephyrus, look at the cooling setup on the Zephyrus. It is so much more extensive with all of these heat pipes coming through. There's so many more heat pipes here, right? So we got 1 snaking around this side, another snaking around this side. We got 3 coming in through here, all shared, and then we got a 4th one coming in over here. So a 5th one. So 5 heat pipes, all shared. I guess except these 2 dedicated ones. I guess that makes it 6 with 1 dedicated to each side, unless this heat pipe goes all the way through. I don't think that goes all the way through. I think it ends right here and ends right here. So clearly the Zephyrus G16 has the best internal layout. And I want to note that the memory slot here on the G16 is gone, right? There's nothing in there. You can put a new slot in there and fill that up for a memory. And you do have an extra M.2 slot here on the right as well. So you see this, you could put another SSD in this laptop as well, which you could not do with the Cyborg 15. So taking a look at the performance now of the Cyborg 15. Let's see what HW Info's got for us, all right? So the Cyborg 15 doing 53 watts of power and averaging, I guess it didn't, the averages are no good. We gotta look at the active values. I just reset it, so we didn't get the full average for the 10-minute time period, but we're doing 81 degrees on the package power. We're doing 55 watts to the CPU. 75 watts, 75 degrees on the cores is not bad. All right, and then our CPU is only doing about 3.3 gigahertz on the P cores, which is not that great. All right, so our 10-minute throttle test score is 11,870. So 11.9K. All right, so it makes sense. We only have 1 fan in the Cyborg 15. And over here, on the Gigabyte G5, look at our CPU package power. You know, we only had 55 watts on the Cyborg. We got 65 watts on the Gigabyte G5, but our temperatures are also very spicy. We're just constantly being thermal throttled on our CPU package power, and our core speeds are 3.7 gigahertz, 2.8 gigahertz on the E cores. So, you know, it's interesting. We only have 4 P cores on this i5 and 8 E cores. So in the end, we have the same number of threads. That's 8 E cores. So this is 12 cores. So you have more cores on this i5, but less performance cores and 4 E cores. So that's so interesting. 2 less performance cores and 4 more E cores on the i5. That makes the performance on this an interesting blend of higher end multi-threaded performance, I think. I'm curious to see what our final score ends up being. I don't know. Let's pop over to the Zephyrus G16. What are we doing on this guy right now? So we have bounced off the thermal limit at 96 degrees. We're doing 99 watts on average. We peaked at 130 watts though. But basically nonstop 100 watts. So the Cyborg 15 only did 55 watts. The Gigabyte G5 did 65 watts. And here we're doing 100 watts for the long power limit, which is going to provide so much more performance. Look at our clock speeds, 4.2 gigahertz on average for our P cores during this test, 3.3 gigahertz on our 4 E cores. Clearly, this is going to be so much better long power limit CPU performance. And I'm very curious to see what we get on the Zephyrus G16. All right, we got 45 seconds left on this test. Let me check with chat and see how we're doing. All right. So, all right. Andola says, I had a Zephyrus in the past, and heat had me worried about any potential monitor wear, but I doubt that it got that hot. Yeah, I haven't seen any monitor damage from the heat of the exhaust. Elephant Tech Gaming says the HP laptop that has the 4090, you said it's $2749, but when I click on your link, the laptop list shows the 4080 version, and when I click up to a 4090, it says $3,200 something dollars. Is it normal in the United States? So the thing is, the 4090 for $2749 has an i7 processor with a full HD display, and I'm guessing those configurations are now sold out, is my guess. So that's why it's not available. All right, Reaper says, I'm going to save for a laptop soon. What do you think is better choice would be, Scar 16 or Duo 16, or wait and see if Lenovo releases something better? If you want the best laptop, what I think is the best laptop right now, I think the Blade 18 is the best laptop all around, personally right now. That's what I'm leaning towards. Even if my rating system doesn't necessarily show that right now, I think that's the best one. Anyway, that's the quick and dirty, but anyway, there's a lot of good laptops though this year. Trust me, there's a lot of great ones. All right, so the Zephyrus G16, we just finished up. We got 16,309 on the Zephyrus G16. That is so much better, right? We got 11,800. That's almost 33% faster than the Cyborg 15. And it looks like we're about to wrap up on the Gigabyte G5. 13,395. So the Gigabyte G5 coming in with a better CPU performance than the i7-12650H, which is super interesting to me. All of those E cores and then a higher power limit just lets it go a little bit further for multi-core rendering. It's interesting. Martin says, any progress on the issue where the GC77 laptop is limited to 120 watts of max of CPU power? Yes. I talked to MSI about that. They said that as long as the NVIDIA GPU is active, then it's going to be limited to 120 watts. So if you want to be able to go beyond 120 for the long power limit, you got to go to integrated GPU or integrated CPU mode or hybrid mode and make sure the NVIDIA GPU is not active when you're doing the rendering. And as long as the NVIDIA GPU is not active, you should be able to pull up to 200 watts at the peak and then I'm not sure what it's going to throttle down to from there, but it should be a lot higher performance. So that's the MSI did it on purpose because they were worried about the power brick taking too much juice. All right. All right. So beautiful. Very interesting. So 11.8K, 13.4K, and 16.3K. That is a very divergent results, given how close in price you're paying. I gotta say the G16's performance, the Zephyrus G16's performance, I think is worth the money on the upgrade, especially considering that it was not thermal throttling at the same time. These other two laptops were thermal throttling, though the Gigabyte G5 performance was pretty good. For the money, it probably might beat the G16 by a little bit, but it was thermal throttling nonstop, where the G16 was still under thermal throttling. So, which laptop do you think is the best 16-inch? Keeping the weight in mind also? As in, you want something super thin and light, or just small and portable? It's hard. You got to give me a little more specification, but I think the best 16-inch... Man, there's so many good 16-inch laptops these days. Scar 16 is phenomenal, but if you want something with better ports, maybe the Blade 16, the Alienware M16 if you can get it by their software. Anyway, let's focus. We're going to try to focus in on these laptops if we can. So next up on our test, I would like to do... what should we do? Let's try to do Timespy, all right? And I kind of want to... I don't think I ever gave these keyboards an official rating. But in terms of functionality, the Cyborg 15 and the Gigabyte G5, they've got better functionality because of the number pad. But in terms of actual typing experience, I still think the Zephyrus G16 typing experience is going to be better. And the backlight, the Cyborg backlight is the best, along with the Zephyrus G16 backlight. All right. So we're going to go ahead and try to do Timespy next on all three laptops at the same time, if I can. Again, I've got these laptops in offline mode. It's going to be a little tricky juggling all three of them. Looks like the Zephyrus G16 may have locked up. I don't know why. No. I dropped my SSD. Okay. Okay, so we've got Timespy pulled up on two of these guys. We're opening up. Yeah, I dropped my external SSD while it was loading. I don't think it liked that very much. All right, we got Timespy loaded up on the Gigabyte G5. and the Zephyrus. All right, and we are gonna try to get all three of these to run at the same time if I can. All right, I might need to restart the Cyborg here because Timespy, when I dropped the drive, it did not like that at all. So beautiful. I also want to mention I have done official unboxings of all three of these laptops, but I really wanted to do a bit more detailed testing side by side. That's why I'm doing this live stream. And so we'll have to see if we discover anything new, basically, because it's super interesting when you're doing things side by side. Just because it's easier to compare, I think, you know, rather than doing it one at a time and then trying to remember. King Dragon says, do you think the Alienware Cherry MX keyboard is the best keyboard on a laptop? No, I don't think so. It feels pretty good, though. I feel like it's pretty good. Reaper says, question, how big of a difference is the best Asus laptop keys versus some laptop mechanical keyboards? I really like the GT77 keyboard a lot. In terms of typing, I'd probably say that the GT77 keyboard is my favorite, just raw typing on the normal keys. Not the best number pad layout, though. And yeah, so I think that's probably accurate to say. All right, so here we are. We're getting 3D Mark opened up now on the Cyborg. And we'll need to get Afterburner going. And I'm going to try to show all three laptop screens at once. This is going to be tricky. We're going to have to try to get everything set up. I don't know how well this is going to work, but we're going to try. Okay. Element Gamer says, I noticed the MSI laptop has a lot of background apps in the taskbar. MSI laptops are usually a lot more bloated stock than others, but you close them out and change startup for better performance. Yeah, you can remove apps too, or use something like Process Lasso to enhance performance. Hi, I have a question. Is liquid metal, can it be replaced with normal thermal paste? Yeah, you can replace that with normal thermal paste. Okay, so we are ready to run all three. All right, so we're going to try to switch this. All right, we're going to try to switch this into the benchmarking mode. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it or not, but here it goes. Now you can hear me, right? All right. Okay, so this is I'm using the webcam from the Blade 18 as my third camera here, and I've got three cameras basically set up right now. to try to capture each of them, and we can split screen them. All right, and we're gonna try to just capture the middle part of the display where Afterburner is gonna be. So I'm gonna have to tweak this a whole bunch probably. So, all right, here we go. Are you ready? We're gonna try clicking all three as best we can. We're gonna line them all up first. All right, and we'll go click, click, click. All right, let's see. Let's see if we can get everything to load. Which one's being captured from the Blade 18? The one on the far left is the one being captured from the Blade 18. I'm gonna put myself over here, I guess. So this is gonna be interesting. All right, this is gonna be very interesting. Okay, so this is kind of a loading test at the same time. All right, so I'm gonna need to reposition this guy. To be kind of like that. All right, and we're gonna need to reposition this guy. Oh. I guess I need to do it kind of like that. I need to make them all a little smaller. All right, so there we go. We got all three, I think, in this test. All right, notice that the Zephyrus G16 has the fastest load time, even though it was the last one that I clicked on. We're going through the test faster than the other two laptops, which is that's interesting. Interesting observation. All right, so during this initial part, we've got 105 watts on the Zephyrus G16. We're not doing 120 watts like it was advertised. The Gigabyte G5 though is doing 76 watts. That's pretty good. I like to see that. All right, and I gotta plug in my light. I'm gonna turn the brightness up a little bit. Okay, all right. So it's interesting looking at the FPS that we're getting. We're definitely getting higher FPS on the Zephyrus G16, right? It's so interesting. You know, it makes sense. We're getting higher wattage on the Zephyrus G16, so we should get the highest performance on that laptop. So right now, the G16 is on the right, the Gigabyte G6 is in the middle, and the MSI Cyborg is on the left. 95 watts on the G16, 68 watts on the Gigabyte, and 72 watts on the Cyborg 15. Interesting. All right, so there's our G16 score, 10,520. Here's the Gigabyte G5 score, 9,605. And then It's hard to move it like this. Okay, okay. Yeah, there we go. So 7,562. All right. That's some pretty big differences in performance, though the gap between the Gigabyte and the Zephyrus G16 is not huge. All right, and just to clarify, I think some of these might have had an overclock. So the Gigabyte G5 did have a 500 overclock applied during that test. Let me see if there's an overclock on any of these other ones. So the Zephyrus G16 had no overclock. And the Gigabyte also had no overclock, okay? Or sorry, the Cyborg had no overclock. So I think the amazing part about this, so basically this one had an overclock. The Gigabyte G5 had an overclock. So it would score a few hundred points less without this overclock in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and also take that overclock off now. So I'm glad I caught that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the CPU scores. Interesting. The Cyborg had the highest CPU score at 10,447. The Gigabyte G5 had the worst at 8,599, and then the Zephyrus G16 had 9,482, which is very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Okay, so let's move on to Cyberpunk 2077. See if we can run that. It's so interesting pressing the same thing on all three laptops to get it going. It's hilarious. All right. We'll need to mute all of these laptops. Okay, so go to settings. We need to go to video. We're going to go full screen, 1080p, that's correct. Graphics, we want ray tracing, ultra, DLSS on quality, and I'm just going to go through and make sure that it's set. So we're going to be running this at the standard 16:9 aspect ratio. So we're going to have to reduce the resolution on the Zephyrus G16 down to 16:9. Turn frame generation on. Apply all of those settings. All right, so I believe we're good to go. right, so I think we're good to start the benchmark. All right, so looking through here now, I'm gonna reset all of the benchmark numbers so they get at least close to the same number. Wow! Look at that performance difference between the Gigabyte G5 and the Zephyrus G16. $65, $80, $87, and then 97 FPS all in the same area. What a huge difference. The wattage pole on the Cyborg really struggles in this game to not focus too much on the CPU. That's the issue. The CPU temp on the Gigabyte definitely gets very spicy as well. All right, so we got 102 on the Zephyrus G16, 91 on the Gigabyte G5, and 61. Is that right? 61.8. Dang. Yeah, 61.8 on the Cyborg. Wow. What a huge difference. Now, I am going to try going in here. I'm going to try balance mode instead. I'm not sure if you can see that, but let's try running it back in balance mode. 1080 quality. Okay, yeah, 61. Yeah, that was a valid test, I think. What do you guys think of that test? I'm really curious if the Cyborg 15 will do a lot better in balance mode, because I saw the GPU only pulling like 30 watts during that test, which is really bad because it's supposed to go to 45. And I think it's because it's in extreme performance mode, which just ends up focusing too much power on the CPU for a lot of games. So you really want to do a GPU balanced mode, I think. Oops. So settings. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and run this back now. And we're gonna see if the Cyborg 15 does any better with updated settings. All right. All right, I've refreshed the averages on all of these laptops. 85 FPS on the Zephyrus. 74 on the Gigabyte G5, and 61 now on the Cyborg 15. So that is a lot better than it was, right? Or is it not? I think that is higher. I think that is noticeably higher on the Cyborg 15. I think this is going to be a little bit more fair test for the Cyborg 15. All right, checking chat. Do you think that Alienware M16 will go down to $1,200 to $1,500 range? Maybe eventually. The Cyborg is getting choked. Yeah, it is. It was, especially in the previous one, it was really choking by this, the CPU is taking all of the juice. And so the GPU just wasn't able to put out nearly as high a performance. Okay, so this time around, we got 102 on the Zephyrus G16, 84 on the Gigabyte G5, and this time we got 70.78. So that is a much better score. All right, a much better score for the Gigabyte, for the Cyborg. That was like, that's a over 10 FPS gain switching from extreme performance to balanced mode. So you don't want, I don't think when you benchmark the Cyborg, you really don't want to benchmark it with extreme performance mode. You actually want to benchmark it with the, let's go into Dead Space next if we can. You want to benchmark the Cyborg in balanced mode. So we're going to have to load. Okay. So the Zephyrus G16 had to go to online mode. We'll see if that holds for us. All right, checking chat. Christopher says, cool. They're like the €500 difference, which is nuts, but would be interesting to see. So do you think the GT77 is a good choice to buy considering the CPU is limited to 120 watts? MSI has Windows Hello, great mini LED, and a number pad. Yeah, I still think the GT77 is worth picking up. It does suck to me that they did what they did, changing it up like that. But I can understand kind of why they did it. I just feel like the way they did it was not ideal. You know, like I wish that they had done it differently. All right, so we're loaded in on the Gigabyte G5. It actually loaded in first. Though I guess the G16 wasn't ready when I was clicking it anyway. All right, LSP says, between 13th Gen i9 or Ryzen 9, which works better in a multi-boxing scenario? 20x emulators at once. Interesting question. I'm guessing the Ryzen would work better if you're going to try to assign like one core to each emulator or something, because the Ryzen gives you 16 P cores. Unless you can do, unless the efficiency cores are enough to run your emulators, then you could run 32 threads worth at least. Theoretically, you could run 32 threads worth on either system, right? So, yeah. All right, so it looks like we're ready to get in here. We'll hit continue. And we'll take a look for Dead Space. We can just sit here at this initial loading screen for a little while, and let's examine our performances. I'm waiting for them all to load in, and then I'm gonna refresh our averages. All right, I'm gonna refresh the Cyborg and the Gigabyte G5. And so the important thing you need to know about Dead Space, at least for benchmarking sakes, is that it really is a very heavy CPU focused game. And it really pushes the limits of your CPU if you're trying to get the most frames per second, for sure. All right, so Dead Space is taking a little while to load on the G16. I think this is the first time it's ever loaded on the laptop, and it has to like build the shaders out and everything. So it takes longer than normal to get loaded in. The other two laptops, I benchmarked Dead Space already on them, so they were able to load in a lot faster. So what do you guys think about this layout for doing for doing 3 laptops at once? Is it a smart layout? Do you guys like this? All right, so there we go. All right, so we're refreshing it on all 3. And let's see what we got. So the Zephyrus G16, all right? what are we doing? We're doing 80 watts through the CPU. That is a lot of wattage. 83 watts, 80, 78, 81, 82 to the GPU. For the GPU on the Gigabyte, we're doing 57 watts. And the CPU, 47. Notice the FPS difference, doing 84 on average on the G16 and only 68 for the Gigabyte G5. And then we've got the MSI doing 40 watts to the GPU and 30 watts to the CPU. So, you know, doing 67 watts, almost matching, basically matching the performance of the Gigabyte in this one. But this really shows you the power of having a more powerful CPU for your gameplay. All right. You know, I mean, our GPU is also faster, right? But it's not like a huge difference between these. I mean, I guess it is, but I mean, look at it. Like the Cyborg is only 39 watts, 44 watts, 38 watts. And it's doing the same FPS as the Gigabyte. You know, that's like, they're both doing 67 and 68, which shows that it's really a focus of the CPU. Or maybe it's also a function of the memory being DDR5 on the MSI. Pretty interesting. Very interesting. Notice our temps on all three are kind of spicy. But the Cyborg actually has the better temps all around at 87 degrees on the CPU. It's obviously the lowest wattage, though, so it's not really that much to brag about. Super interesting. Okay. All right. So, so for Dead Space, we're clearly getting noticeably more FPS with the Zephyrus G16. Like, that's a pretty big chunk. 86. Let's calculate it up, right? Let's calculate it up real quick. How much more FPS are we getting? So 86 minus 68 is 18 FPS divided by 68. So that's 24.6%, or sorry, 26.4% more FPS on the Zephyrus G16. That's pretty worth it, I think. That's another example of the performance upgrade potential. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the next game. Let's see if we can do Dying Light 2. Wait, no, we don't have Dying Light 2. We've got to do God of War if we can. All right. Black Parade says, just check the Zephyrus G16 with 4060 12th gen Intel Full HD screen. 1999 euros. Same price as the MacBook Pro 16 with the M1 Pro. That's kind of interesting. Tian says, so not any cheaper. Is that right? Since I don't know the exchange rate between USD and pound, but pound and IUD is much more expensive. Oh, you guys are talking about the same laptop. All right. So, all right. So we're going to go ahead and hit continue on all three. All right, and we're going to go ahead and reset our FPS on all three. Okay, so I just gotta get a better camera for the third camera, and then this will be a really great setup, I think. All righty then. I gotta make sure that we're in the same settings, because I don't think we're in the same settings. So we want 1080p. Oh, interesting. Right, God of War bases its resolution off of your Windows resolution. So I got to change my display resolution down to 1080p. All right, and yeah, so I got to restart the game. If we're going to do this test correctly, I'm going to have to restart the game for the Zephyrus G16, unfortunately, because now it's got black bars instead of going full screen. So we're going to reopen this guy. All right, so checking the settings on these other laptops, though. 1080p, 16:9 with DLSS on quality. Let's go to graphics. Right now it's set to low. Let's go to ultra. All right, that's better. So 1080p on the Cyborg, that's correct. DLSS is on quality. Graphical settings are on low. We need to upgrade this to ultra. All right, so there's those two. Huh. Our resolution on the Zephyrus G16 is still messed up somehow. Okay. There we go. All right, and our graphics settings, we are on ultra. Beautiful. All right, so we're going to reset and we're going to calculate our FPS up on all three. Let me see if I can. There we go. All right, so the Cyborg doing 43 FPS. The Gigabyte G5 doing 49 FPS. And the Zephyrus G16 doing 63 FPS. All right, our 1% lows right now on the G16 are higher than the average FPS of either of the other two laptops. That is pretty substantial. All right, now our temperatures on the G16 are also very good at 75 degrees on the GPU, 73 degrees on the CPU. The Gigabyte has, we just hit 100 degrees temperature on the CPU. We are also being temperature throttled on the GPU. Apparently it throttles at 80 degrees, which is interesting. And for the Cyborg, we've got 43 FPS, which is 20 less, all right, than the G16. If you were to upgrade from the Cyborg to the Zephyrus G16, it would cost you $350, but it would give you more than 50% gain in performance. Oh, that is some spicy gains in performance for a third of the cost of the laptop, less than a third of the cost of the laptop, getting a 50% gain, almost. That is a big difference. All right. Okay. Wow. All right. So, yeah, that definitely points towards the Zephyrus G16 again being more worth it. Let's move on to our next game. We've got Hogwarts Legacy. If we can do it, I'm hoping we can get into it on all three. So weird using this laptop upside down. Uh-oh. So, in order to use this game, we'll need to go online first. And then... All right, so that one worked. And now I need to enter offline on this one. Let's see. Shabalagoo, I think we're loading in now. All right, so we have DLSS on quality. Frame generation is enabled. And we're on all ultra settings with ray tracing enabled. All right, so we're checking the settings on each of the laptops to make sure nothing's messed up. Oh, texture should be on low, by the way. Everything else is fine the way it is. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and load in now. Hopefully we load into the same spot. Mars says, so which one's faster? You can briefly check back and forth, but the Zephyrus G16 costs more, and it's faster. So it's pretty impressive, though. All right, so we're gonna stop that. Stop that. I'm gonna try to get them to be the same. Gigabyte G5 KC. I'm not sure which model do I have with me right now. Is this? I'm not sure off the top of my head. So, all right. So we're loading in. We're checking our settings. All that's looking good. All right. So the Duo is looking good. Let's go ahead and get loaded in. So Tyclord says DLSS / frame gen equals fake FPS. And I do agree with that to an extent, but they're not fake in the sense that you don't see them. You do see them. And they do enhance your gameplay experience, and it's how gamers are going to play these games. If you want the optimal frame rates, you're going to want to play with DLSS and frame gen. The only reason I think to not use DLSS and frame gen is if the game implementation sucks with them, or you're trying to compare performance versus a Radeon GPU. But at the same time, I feel like the proper methodology for testing would be using AMD FSR. I don't know, you know? And when you're using the Radeon GPU, you use FSR, and when you use NVIDIA, you use DLSS. Whatever the best implementation on each product was, that's only a fair way to test it, in my opinion. Okay, so here we are. Let's see what we get. Okay, so we're getting 60 FPS. I want to make sure that our Cyborg is not being VSync stopped or anything like that. So let me pop into settings real quick to make sure. Okay, it says uncapped. That's good. Okay, so looking at our FPS now, we have reset the FPS. I wish the Blade 18 had a better quality. There it goes. It like changes the resolution or frame rate or something, or like the exposure on me a little bit. I don't understand why. Okay, so wow. Let's examine what we got going on, all right, in these ones. This one is interesting. All right. So the Zephyrus G16, 90 FPS, 72% for our 1% lows. Keep in mind, all right, keep in mind, we're not running around. Hogwarts is very different experience when you're running around. It's very stuttery if you don't have enough RAM or VRAM. So very different experience, all right? So the most important things I want to point out right now is that the G16 comes with 16 gigs of RAM. It is single channel. It is DDR4. The Gigabyte comes with 8 gigs of RAM, DDR4. The Cyborg 15 comes with 8 gigs of RAM, DDR5, but it's only 8 gigs of RAM still. So Hogwarts definitely wants more than 8 gigs of RAM. You can see the Zephyrus G16 is already using 12 gigs of RAM, and we're not even running around and doing anything in the game yet. So it's not quite maxed the RAM, but it probably would if we started running around and doing stuff. Now, if you want smooth frame rates in Hogwarts, you're definitely going to want to get a second RAM stick. Now that we've got had a chance to let these guys sit here, I'm going to go ahead and run up and down the street on each of them. It's very difficult to do this at the same time. But let's see here. Let's go to an area. Maybe there's an area where I can run around. All right, so we're gonna take the G16 for a little run here. Maybe there's a map area we can jump to. Let's try. There should be an area maybe out here. Let's go out here. There should be a path out by. I don't usually benchmark over here, but this over here doesn't require any running around or turning, so I can maybe do this with all 3 laptops at once if I stretch my fingers out really far. So the goal is going to be to try to run from one point to another point, just to see like an average FPS. So I'm going to stand kind of like on this line, and I'm going to center up on that water fountain in the middle. All right, and oh man, see the Gigabyte G5? It's chugging already. It is struggling to keep our 1% FPS good. Oh, I went to the wrong. I was upside down and I clicked on the wrong map location. We're gonna have to. All right, so we need to pause these for a second. I'm trying to keep the computers on at the same time of day because there's like a day-night cycle in the game. And if you just let the character stand there, it's going to eventually become nighttime, which is going to affect our performance benchmarks. I don't want, if it does go nighttime, I want it to go nighttime at around the same time. Apollodora asks, is there any way to undervolt the Gigabyte G5 for lower temperatures? Not that I know of. All right, so notice the stuttering on the Gigabyte, or sorry, on the MSI. All right, notice the stuttering on the G5. And I want you to notice the lack of stuttering, all right, on the G16 as we turn around. There's no stuttering because it has enough RAM. 16 gigs of RAM, definitely a requirement. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and reset our FPS on all three. All right, so we've just reset our FPS on all three of the units. All right, so right now we are doing 97 FPS on the Zephyrus G16, 74 FPS on the Gigabyte G5, and 66 FPS on the Cyborg 15. That's a pretty big difference. All right, that is a very big difference. All right, now we're gonna try to run forward. We're gonna try to, I'm trying to center this as best I can. So we run the same exact direction on all three. But I don't know if we'll be able to do it. All right, so here we go. Ah, I gotta scooch. I gotta scooch one of these laptops over. I don't know. Okay. Can I do it? Oh no. Okay, so there's that one. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Oh, we're doing it. We're running all three at the same time. Woo, a moving benchmark. Oops. Okay. So there you go. There's a bit of a moving benchmark for you in Hogwarts. But as I turn around on the G16, smooth. All I'm seeing is smooth frame rates. Our 1% low is at 56. All right. As I move around in the G5, and it has to load something in, it gets nice and stuttery. All right. It actually didn't seem too bad there. It's hard for me to tell, but our 1% lows are 18. Yeah, there's a stutter there on the Cyborg. It's far from ideal on the Cyborg. All right. So next up, we have The Witcher 3. I clicked the wrong game. Yeah, it looks like our Gigabyte G5 could get a driver update as well right now. I don't think it has the latest drivers on it. I don't think it's going to make too big a difference, though. Okay, Christopher D wants to know, are any of these laptops physically hot? That's a great question. Let's do a physical test. All right, feeling the Zephyrus G16. Both wrist rests and the touchpad are cool on the G16. WASD keys are a little bit warm. The G and H, like the center of the keyboard, that's a bit warm right there, all right? So let me go ahead and switch. I'll switch to this camera angle, all right? So cool, all of this area is cool. This is a bit warm. This is cool, cool-ish, or like slightly warm on the WASDs. And then cool, warm on the back. The back is very, this part right here is very hot. I wouldn't want to touch that. All right. The Gigabyte G5. Mostly cool, a little bit warm over here by the arrow keys. Warm, it's right here, it's pretty warm. In the JK area. A little bit warm, but actually the WASDs are slightly warm. So WASD is not too bad. A little bit warm here but the wrist rest is cool. Touchpad is cool. It is warm in the back. Like up here is very hot. I wouldn't want to touch back here very much. All right. And then let me rotate around. You can see the Cyborg 15 making out with my Razer Blade 18 over here. You guys can see that? All right, so wrist rest on the Cyborg is cool. WASDs are just a little bit warm. This back area is hot. Hot in the back, hot in the back, hot in the back. A little bit warm. Wrist rests are cool though. I think all three of these laptops you could play. All right. You could use all three of those to play games. But it's not like it's ideal, I guess, you know. I think all three of them. Well, so all right, let me phrase that again. So the Gigabyte G5, I think is the warmest of the three, but I think all three could be playable without being uncomfortable. You wouldn't want the laptop on your lap on any of these three. They're all very spicy feeling. I think I'm from the bottom perspective, but overall, they're not bad. All right, so I'm not sure what settings are being loaded in here at the outset. We'll need to check our settings on each of these. Let's go ahead and check the Gigabyte G5. So right now we have, I believe, a low with frame generation on. And then DLSS is on quality, all right? I believe that's going to be true for all three of these. So this is an example of low settings. Correct. Okay, so frame generation is on with DLSS on quality. And we're on low settings. And yeah. All right, so I'm sure the Cyborg's on the same settings because they're all loaded from the cloud. So interesting. I'm gonna turn just a little to the left so that we can see the numbers a little better. But look at that. So we're doing 127 on the Cyborg, 141 on the Gigabyte G5, and then we're doing 179 on the Zephyrus G16. That's a big difference. All right. Yeah, we're seeing the Gigabyte G5 run at 100 degrees on the CPU made me kind of concerned. Yeah. The Gigabyte G5 likes to run hot. I would recommend CPU repasting that. Our Zephyrus G16, all right, the temperatures in the G16, again, are really good. 45 watts to the CPU, 90 to 95 watts to the GPU. And our boost clock, if you look at that, is at 2490, 2475. On the Gigabyte G5, the boost clock's at 1800 to 1900. That's a big difference in boost clock. And then the Cyborg is only at a 1700 to 1800 boost clock. That is, again, another big difference. And that's just simply because of the wattage. The wattage coming through the system is much higher on the Gigabyte G5 and the Zephyrus G16, but especially the Zephyrus G16 is much better temps and much better wattage. All right, so yeah, that is very interesting. Let's go ahead and jump over to Ultra settings now, and we'll do the same test. We'll put ray tracing on Ultra. All right, DLSS on quality. with frame generation enabled. All right, so there's that. Ray tracing on Ultra. Beautiful. All right, and now for our last one, we're gonna change. Look, guys, the Cyborg's winning. It finally won. So ray tracing on Ultra. Go back. Zoom. Okay, so taking a look at our FPS on Ultra settings now, we've got 77 on the G16, 59 on the Gigabyte G5, and 52 for the Cyborg, all right? So once again, a very noticeable performance bump, jumping from laptop to laptop. The only game where the Cyborg was basically neck and neck with the Gigabyte G5 was in Dead Space, I believe. So, very interesting. High-end news on the MSI Pulse 15. I didn't get it in yet. I'm sorry. I don't think the order went through. So it's going to be a little bit delayed. I'm going to get it in though eventually here. So it's probably going to be a couple weeks, I'm guessing, unless it gets really delayed. But yeah, so once again, we're seeing 78 FPS on the G16 versus 53 on the Cyborg. So 78 minus 53, that's a 25 FPS difference divided by 53. That's a 47% gain in performance between the Cyborg 15 and the Zephyrus G16. All right. So it looks like it crashed. We got our numbers anyway. Let's go ahead and switch the camera angles now. Let's stack these up and compare sizes on all three of these laptops. All right, so okay, cool. We'll go ahead and close these. Close this. All right. All right, so let's talk ports and size difference between these, and then we're going to do a wrap up. All right. So here is the three laptops. If we get them all lined up exactly on the back. All right, they're the same width. All right, they're the same width. And you can see that the Cyborg actually sticks out a little bit. All right. So right there, you can see the Cyborg here is a little bit longer, a little bit deeper than the other two. All right. Now for ports, on the right side, we've got, all right. So for ports on the right side, on the Zephyrus G16, we've got a USB-A and a micro SD card slot. On the right of the the Cyborg, we got a USB-A, a USB-C, an HDMI 2.1, and an Ethernet port, as well as the power adapter port. There's a lot of the Cyborg ports over here on the right. And then for the bottom, the Gigabyte, we've got a micro SD card slot, a USB-C, and our Ethernet port that pops down. We got exhausts as well on the right side for the other two laptops, but not the Cyborg. All right. Now on the back side, you can see that we've got no ports for the G16 or the Cyborg, but the Gigabyte has another USB-C, so that's a nice extra USB-C, HDMI, and a mini display port, as well as the power adapter port is on the rear of the device. These other two have the power adapter port plug-in on the sides. All right, that's a pretty big difference. Where you plug it in can be disadvantageous having it on the side sometimes, I think. Sometimes it's better having it on the back. All right, and then the right side ports, we've got a power adapter port, HDMI 2.1, Ethernet port, USB-A, and two USB-Cs. One of these is it a Thunderbolt 4? Let me check if it's a Thunderbolt 4. I think it might be a Thunderbolt 4 port, and that's a pretty substantial difference if it's Thunderbolt 4. So popping over here to the tech specs page. Yeah, so Thunderbolt 4 with DisplayPort and power delivery input. So if you're looking to plug in the laptop and charge it with a smaller power brick on the go, then the G16 is going to be capable of that. I don't think the other two laptops have power delivery. Let's check. Let's go to the Gigabyte G5 tech specs. So it's USB-C 3.2 Gen 2, but I don't see power delivery being listed in the spec page here on the Gigabyte G5. And with the Cyborg, let's pop over to that tech spec page. And that one's also not power delivery, at least not according to this, but at least they're HDMI 2.1 on the Cyborg 15, but not the Gigabyte G5. They don't specify which type of HDMI it is, so it's probably like 2.0 or maybe even worse for the Gigabyte G5 HDMI port. But at least you do have the mini display port on the Gigabyte G5. I don't know. I don't know what the HDMI is though. All right, so but at least with this DisplayPort support and power delivery port on the G16, you're getting much better ports on the G16 because of the options this gives you. Like you could plug in an external GPU with this. You could put in a Thunderbolt 4 dock. You could use a headset port here on the front. They all three have headset ports, but the Gigabyte has a mic port and a headset port. That's the only other difference there. And the Gigabyte also, I think, has one USB-A. Popping over here, Gigabyte G5. You got one USB 2.0 on the Gigabyte G5. So that's a really slow port. You're only going to want to plug like a mouse into that. You know, it's not going to transfer data very fast. So that's another downside, I think, to the Gigabyte G5, not having all of them be fast and high quality ports. Whereas you get all high quality ports with the G16. All right, so let's wrap up. All right, it's time to wrap up. Let's go ahead and get to the point where we are basically summarizing what we found. All right, so let's talk about the Cyborg first. All right, so the Cyborg, this guy has one of the cheapest. It's one of the cheapest laptops on the market at $1099 with the RTX 4060. It's just very low wattage. One fan, low quality display. The keyboard's nice. The touchpad's pretty decent. The ports on it are high quality, but there's not very many ports. The performance on this, sometimes we were seeing 50% gains in performance going to the Zephyrus G16. We were seeing more like 10 to 20% performance gains jumping from the Cyborg to the Gigabyte G5. So it's not as big of gains going to the Cyborg, but the Cyborg, going to the Gigabyte, but at least the Gigabyte is actually, it's actually a little cheaper right now because the link is $50 off right now on Newegg. So link in the description for the Gigabyte G5. Right now, $50 off. It's $1,049, I believe, when it's on sale right now. But I don't expect that sale to last too long. Now, last time I tested the Gigabyte G5, I had power adapter issues with the power adapter going out on me. I did not experience that at all today. I don't know why it was going out last time. It may have been because I had the fan exhaust from the laptop blowing right on the power adapter, and the power adapter was just overheating. Now, I did leave Timespy running in a loop for like an hour today to see if the power adapter would fail on the Gigabyte G5, and it did not fail on me. So I don't know what's going on with why it was messing up the first time. Maybe there was some funky stuff and maybe some update went through and it got better. I don't know. But given the current state of it, it seemed to be better this time around. It still is a little worrisome that it was not better last time. All right, so in terms of do I recommend the Cyborg? Not really. There's better options out there, and you're really getting even better bang for the buck if you go with the Zephyrus G16 in terms of performance for your money, as well as premium feel, speaker quality, just about everything. Now, between the speakers on these three, the Zephyrus G16 was clearly the best speakers. But the Cyborg actually surprised me. It was a little better than I thought. Probably like around a 7.5 on the speaker rating, somewhere in there, 7.5. I don't know. I need to like find it. Like if I were to rate it, that's probably the ballpark I would put it. The Gigabyte G5 speakers though were downright awful. They were like a 3 or a 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10 at most. They were tinny. They didn't have very good clarity. They weren't very loud. All right. In terms of performance, the Gigabyte G5 was noticeably faster than the Cyborg 15. In almost all of the games, it was like between 10 to 20% faster than the Cyborg. It varied depending on the game. But the temperatures on this Gigabyte G5 were very spicy indeed. We were getting up to 100 degrees Celsius on the CPU quite often. So if you run into that problem, I'd recommend a laptop cooling pad. I would recommend repasting your CPU and GPU potentially. There's tutorials online that you can look up if you want to learn how to do that. But doing those two things alone would probably improve the temperatures drastically on this Gigabyte G5, making it a potentially even better performance than what we saw today. We did see some temperature thermal throttling on the GPU as well in some of the games. In addition, in Hogwarts, we saw terrible 1% low stutters on the Gigabyte G5 and the Cyborg because they only have 8 gigs of RAM. Now, on all three of these laptops, I would recommend a RAM upgrade because they're all single channel. But especially you want to get at least to 16 gigs of RAM as well. So that would be the other upgrade I would highly recommend for all three of these. In terms of keyboard functionality and quality, the Zephyrus G16 takes the cake again. And in terms of build quality, feeling more premium, the Zephyrus G16 is in a really nice spot. I think we got this nice holographic design to the this like dot pattern in here is really nice. We've got this nice overall thin profile. It's very thin. All three of these laptops are very portable and fairly thin though, right? They're not, all three of them are to go, take with you type of laptops. But just the overall package experience, like this G16 is kicking some tail. All right, you're pushing higher frames in this than the other two laptops, and you're pushing high enough frames that I think you're getting potentially more frames per dollar going for the Zephyrus G16 versus the Cyborg and the Gigabyte G5, which was the thing that surprised me. I thought it would perform better, but I didn't think we would get more frames per dollar in these games, you know. And then in addition, the G16 has a display that has no ghosting. So if you're looking to play esports, the G16 display is going to play those esports games really well. You're going to be able to aim really well. For a 165 hertz display, it's a little faster refresh rate, but most importantly, the ghosting is better, and the color gamut on the display is better too. So, I mean, just the overall package, the laptop feel, the performance you get for your money, the port selection that you get for your money, the G16 is a vastly superior buy compared to the Gigabyte G5 and the Cyborg 15. That's my take on it right now. I think if you're looking to get the most bang for the buck and you're just like, you're hard capped, it's got to be $1,100 or less, then I would pick the Gigabyte G5 over the Cyborg because it has better performance. It's got more port selection, even if it's got some lower quality ports like the USB 2.0. And it at least has 3 USB-A ports, and usually at least one of your USB-As that you plug in can be slower, right? So that's the other thing about the Gigabyte G5 is that the port selection on it has more USB-A's than even the Zephyrus G16. Now, the other feature that the G16 has is Windows Hello. I love Windows Hello. Usually only more premium laptops have Windows Hello. But at least when you get the G16, you feel like you're getting your performance for your money. At the same time, you're getting the premium speakers, the higher color gamut display, the 16:10 aspect ratio, the better quality ports. I'm just kind of repeating myself right now. So I think that wraps up my thoughts on this whole thing. I'm trying to think of anything else that's worth mentioning. Let me check chat and see if you guys have any questions. Christopher D says the G5 CPU temperature. Ouch. Yeah, it's the Gigabyte G5 CPU temperature. It got very spicy, but we did see some spicy temperatures on each of the laptops. Like in Dead Space, we saw spicy temperatures on all three, simply because of the ultra high CPU wattage we were pulling in Dead Space. But in most of the games, the Zephyrus G16 had phenomenal temps. At the same time, good 1% lows. There's not much complaints about the G16. I mean, you're getting a good bang for the buck. I think it's a good value overall. All right, Valor says definitely would pick up the G16. Ferdinand says hello from Amsterdam. Man, love your reviews. Cool, man. Thanks for stopping by, Ferdinand. Britt Allen says, can I say something about Clevo? They don't update their BIOS regularly. Interesting. Yeah, I think some companies just don't update their firmware, their BIOS, their software when they have problems. And I gotta say that the Gigabyte, being a Clevo chassis, may end up running into more firmware problems where the Asus laptop and the MSI laptop, I feel like, are going to get better software support. And I think their launchers are also more feature rich with more options to turn off and on, especially the Asus Armory crate. There's a lot in there that you can tune to get a more optimal experience. All right, again, looking over. Chat, I think that covers everything. I hope this was helpful to you guys. I mean, I think that this is a good roundup for these three laptops. I think I am good to go ahead and resell the Zephyrus G16 to the review unit program. So if you're interested in buying the Zephyrus G16 that I have here on hand, become a member and fill out that waiting list, the wait list application. And then I'm going to be selling the Zephyrus G16 to someone whoever buys it. So WTD Life says, when can you receive your Lab Legion Pro 7i 4080? I really look forward to watching your review about it. Your reviews are the best I can find on YouTube. So thanks so much for the nice comment. I don't know when I'm getting my Legion. The last update I got from BH Photo was like, I don't know, like a week ago. And it said that the laptop was still delayed. I think I just need to cancel that order and reorder it from Lenovo. I think that's probably the best option for me to get that. Otherwise, it's not coming. Now, before we end the live stream, guys, I just want to invite you to like the live stream if you found this live stream helpful. Let YouTube know that this live stream is worth sharing, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys in the next live stream. I've got lots of great live streams coming up. I'm going to do a live stream on how to undervolt the SCAR 16 and overclock it and optimize it, because the BIOS was recently updated on that, and it should allow for full undervolting now with Intel XTU. So we may see very high Cinebench scores in the SCAR 16 coming up. In addition, what else? I'm going to do the Razer Blade 16 review coming up, or like benchmarks and review. And then we've also got the Alienware M16. We're going to see if Alienware has fixed their software problem coming up as well. So that's going to be interesting. I'm going to plug in the Alienware and we're going to see what the software is like now. I'm not going to do anything special on it ahead of time. It's all going to be on the stream. So everyone will be able to see all the ugly glory and guts for the Alienware stuff. So anyway, Zach A says, I'm holding out for the Zephyrus G14. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a thinner, lighter machine, but still probably deliver pretty incredible performance is what I'm thinking. So we'll see. Yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next live stream. Brandon out. All right.